Let's get started. Okay. All right. Bring yourself here and now. Hear what you hear. Sense what you sense. Feel what you feel. And notice that no matter how busy everything gets, how noisy everything gets, when it settles down, it always comes to the same place. When everything settles down, when the emotional turmoil settles down, when the mind busyness settles down, when the hyperactivity settles down, it all comes back to the same place. This place of peace that is not out there. Never is, never will be. Oh, sure, being in the woods. But the woods simply brings us back to this place in ourselves that is at the bottom of everything. This is the inner peace that people are looking for. They just keep looking for it outside. They think that if they can just control the world the right way, they could be and finally have peace. They think that if we just negotiate the right terms of agreement between two nations, then we can finally have peace. It's nonsense. This is the place of it. World peace is nothing more than a collection of people who have found inner peace. It could never be anything else. And so, not just the starting place, but the ending place is this. And the biggest contribution we could make to the world situation is to be in touch with this as close to 24/7 as possible. Because what it is that we are at this moment in time, which is the sum total of everything we pay attention to outside or inside at any one moment in time, is what it is we are projecting out into the collective field. So if I'm walking around in a disturbed state, I'm putting that back out into the field and I'm contributing to the noise. When I'm in touch with this sense, this source of peace inside myself, then this is what I'm putting out into the field for everyone. You can't put out an isolated little sliver of your energy that only affects one tiny corner of this infinite space. It's everything we put out or let come through us is constantly radiating into the collective field. So really, it's not so much about finding inner peace. It's about letting go of anything that is in the way. And that's a whole different strategy. It's a whole different way of looking at things. And it is much more aligned with the structure of consciousness. And we'll talk about this. So just now, notice where the source of peace is. Notice where the source of this inner peace is. It's at the bottom of you. It's at the base. It's at the core of you. Which means this is our most natural state. We have to do a lot of shenanigans to screw this up. That's how much effort it takes to block this. Most people are out of touch with this in one way or another, but it's always here. You don't attain inner peace. You let go of what's in the way, and then it naturally reveals itself. It emanates from the core, so it's the most natural flow of ourselves. It's actually effortless. How much effort are you putting into this right now? All we did was let go. Keep that in mind as we talk about what we're going to talk about tonight. That's the key factor here. Hey, Luciano.
Going on.
Man, nice to have you here. Okay, being sane, being at peace in an insane world seems to be more so than ever. And we'll see about going into the hows and whys of all of that. But really, the purpose of tonight is, where's our agency with regard to the world situation? What's our relationship to it? And what's our responsibility to it? I think those are the three good domains. Responsibility, relationship, and what was the first one I said?
Agency.
Agency, thank you. Okay, agency, responsibility, relationship. It seems like the outside world has always been compelling. The nervous system is designed to be facing the outside world. The operating system for the body, which I call the ego, is designed to operate the senses and be outward facing. It's always looking out here, out here, out here. And it makes sense given its role. Its role is to function in this thing we call the world. Hang on. But as such, it gets confused. It gets hypnotically fixated out here. Part of the reason why is part of its programming, because its job is to keep the biological unit safe and alive. And so it does need to navigate out here, and it's fixated out here because it's out here that it perceives the threat to the body, and therefore it's constantly at some level in vigilance mode, scanning the environment, at the very least a background here, to determine if there's a threat coming and then to counter it. That is a very core part of its process. But as such, because of it, it's what operates the senses. It is outgoing all the time. It's focused outwards. It's going through the senses. It's gathering input from the senses, and it's making calculations based on that, and then movements based on that, and future planning based on that. And that is the way it operates. But there are several aspects of the structure of consciousness of which we are greater than the ego that I want to bring in here, because there's places where this ego gets confused. And if you think you're the ego and it's cut off from information we're going to be talking about today, you can get really scary given what's going on out there in the world right now. And we'll talk about the purpose in one sense of that. I mean, there's many different purposes you could assign to it, but the one that I have took from it since 2016 and then accelerated in 2023, and I'll come back to that. So it's outward going. as such, it takes the outer world to be what it calls reality. That's this, everybody thinks this is what's the reality of things. So when things are going on here, it takes it very seriously. Interestingly enough, and I'll circle back to it, when I was living in India in 1986, the guru lady I was over there with, she said, you could always tell how stuck in the ego you are at any one moment in time by how seriously you're taking the moment. So the ego takes everything seriously, because as this is reality. But is it? In order to add another layer, a necessary layer on here, I'm going to refer again to what I talked about last satsang and the satsang before, which I call the apparent trap. Hey, Dylan, come on and grab. Yeah, grab here. The apparent trap, which is falling for what is seeming reality as opposed to what real reality is, the apparent trap. It's taking what we see through our senses as the final authority of what reality is. Now, when we were talking about it in the context of money, we said that, well, if you see your bank account getting lower, the apparent trap is you think that's the source of your money, or your job is the source of your money. But in today now, we're going to talk about really what's the source of inner peace, and how does the apparent trap play into that? Again, consciousness tends to be outward going. The awakening process turns on an inner process by which then some of your consciousness turns around and starts to go inward and looking at this direction in this place. And so people are on a continuum for that. And if somebody's completely asleep, they're outward looking only. There's no self-reflective capacity running. But then somebody wakes up and some self-reflection can happen. And then that can go all the way to the other side where they are experiencing their relationship to outer reality as if it's a dream state, and the actual reality is in the inner plane, and that's where it all is, and then the outer world just takes care of itself. So there's this continuum. To the degree that we're identified with the ego and therefore we believe what it tells us about reality, we believe that in order to be peaceful, in order to be safe, certain things have to occur in the outer world. There have to be certain conditions in the outer world for that to take place. And then when that gets to be that way, then I can fill in the blank. I can relax, I can feel safe, I can be okay. So then what happens is everybody individually and collectively through that ego mechanism gets caught up in trying to manipulate their outer world in order to get themselves to be able to feel okay. Mm-hmm. There's a huge fallacy there, and the cost of it is that we are messing around. We're looking into a mirror, but we don't realize we're looking into a mirror, and then we're frantically trying to move the chair in the mirror, thinking that's got to be on the other side of the room for me to be okay, when in fact that chair is just a reflection of my consciousness at that moment that I'm projecting outwards. So the apparent trap is thinking that something outside of ourselves can give us the thing that we're looking for. But then it also has an effect on us. So where I'm going with this is, I guess we're going to go into a little bit into woo-woo land. I don't know if I would call it that. But we've talked about this before. Probably one of the most powerful affirmations, I don't know if that's the right word, but declarations of truth that one can utter out of their mouth is the phrase, I am. And that is in complete alignment with like the deepest vibration of the source of all life, which is coming in from the inner plane, and it comes out through into our mind, it comes out through our experience here, and it gets projected out into the outer world. That's the flow of creation. But the apparent trap says the inner world doesn't matter. It's got no bearing on anything. There really isn't even a thing called the inner world. It's just your imagination. Everything that matters is out here. And so we take our cues from that. And what we don't realize is if we're taking that and we're getting our signal for whether we are safe, if we're getting that signal, whether we can be at peace and whether we can relax, if we're getting that signal from the outside world, we're getting a distorted picture of what that reality is. Not realizing that it's what we do inside ourselves that creates whether that outside world is peaceful or not. Now, here's where I want to start to go into necessary extra detail. There's this thing called the world. But what is it? Does it actually exist? Or is it what I think of the world is really my imagination? In other words, does Donald Trump exist? Well, if you go to Washington and you manage to get into the White House, I'm face to face with the guy, he's there. But does he exist in my experience right now prior to me talking about him? No. So we have two things here if you want to simplify it. There is my world, there's your world, your individual experience of your reality. And then there's this thing called the world, which is, to be honest, if you think about it, it's our own projection right now. That which, when I say the world, I have something in myself that is that. I know that it's what I'm referring to for myself. But that thing is a complete fiction. It's what I made up about my relationship to what I call my world. I might not use my world, and then it becomes the world, and then I get confused in there. But it's frankly my world. Do I feel safe in my world? And then I can't tell you how many people we talk to. And it's like, well, but the world is all fucked up and blah, 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 blah. But what is it we're taking in at that moment? I'm reading the news, I'm watching the news or something, and I start to feel this in my body. Well, what caused that? I'm taking something in through the senses, mapping it into my world, and if there's anything in me that doesn't feel safe, it's resonating that thing, and I really feel disturbed. But where's the disturbance coming from at that moment? Is it coming from an event in the world, or is it coming from what I tell myself about that event and how I hold it in myself? If you slow down reality and you watch how you process it, you will find that what you're experiencing is your own internal construction about external events. Whether the external events are happening or not, Ukraine is happening, Gaza is happening, Washington is happening, that's all going on. But if we weren't talking about it, would it be going on right now, this instant for you? And then somebody mentions something about, Epstein, and it all comes flooding in. Everything we've already taken in about it. So what is your world? Your world is what your internal creation of it is right now. Now, if you get that, it's like talk to somebody and we talk about something like this. How could I be peaceful with what's going on in the Middle East? Well, where did that disturbance come from at that instant? It didn't come from the Middle East. It came from that person's judgment and projections about the Middle East that they just triggered in themselves. Well, this is good. Because what it means is the path to inner peace has nothing to do with the outside world. If there are a bunch of Nazis banging on my door right now, I have a few other things I have to attend to in real time, But there's nobody there right now. This goes back to, reminds me of that parable of the Buddhist monks. Two of them are walking down the road, and They come to a crossing of water, and there's a woman there who can't get across. And one monk picks her up and carries her across the water, puts her down. They get to the other side, and they keep walking on. And like 20 minutes later, the other monk is start to, like judge the first monk for picking up a woman, touching a woman. And he looks at me and goes, I put that woman down 20 minutes ago, but you're still carrying her. That's what I'm talking about. What is it that we are carrying that is not good for us to be carrying? Who does it help to carry that? And what is so now we're coming into agency, responsibility, and relationship. What is our relationship to the world? What is our agency about our relationship to our world? And how does that map into the world? And what is our, I'd say, what was last one? Responsibility. What is our relationship to it? And what is our response hyphen ability to this? This all ties together. Our relationship to the world, based on everything I just talked about, is really one of projection. But it's not without impact. Projection matters. Everything that creates a war is nothing but a bunch of projections that nobody's owning. Nobody is owning. So our relationship to the world, our relationship to our world, is one of projection. We're projecting into this perceptually, emotionally, mentally, energetically, that which it is we are holding in what we believe about ourselves, what we believe about the world and the universe, and what we believe we are within that. We're doing all of that. Then agency says, within that, we have choice. But it's not about trying to change or control anything outside. The choice is, what am I holding inside? Am I continuing to hold the fear of what's going to happen in the world? Am I continuing to hold the outrage and the anger and this and that? So there is a agency there where I can choose what to do with what I'm taking into my energy field. And then there's a responsibility, which goes with agency, that I have the ability to make a choice about what I do with all of this. And that choice matters the most because it sets off an entire cascade of events based on what you're choosing at that moment. In every moment, it's like we're doing this unconsciously to semi-consciously to fully consciously. Every moment, there are things coming through our experience. A combination of personal history, a combination of world history, a combination of all the news we've taken in, everything, things going on in our personal life, things going on with family, everything's just, something's coming through 24/7. The agency and the responsibility we have is, do we meet what's coming through with love or fear? That's it. There is no other option. And fortunately, that's the only choice we need. It's the only choice we need, because that one choice is like taking, I talked about this in the context of money and prosperity, but this is how universal it is. It applies to everything. Here's my consciousness. I can plug it into this stream or plug it into this stream. Those are two streams of information. One is fear-based, ego-based external reality. The other one is internal reality of the depth and the truth of that which I am, which is I am, which is all of us. Distilling it down, one is the voice of fear, one is the voice of love. Whichever one I plug into is going to utilize my neurology into the world and have impact. So the apparent trap is believing the news as it's told. I don't mean whether they're lying or they're not lying or whether there's a conspiracy, or I'm not talking about that at all. Even assume for a moment that the news as reported is 100% integrous and pure. Even that If that's what you're using as your basis for reality, you're falling into the apparent trap. Because where's the source of the peace that we're looking for? You can go to the highest mountain peaks, you can go to the deepest Himalayan caves, you can go to the most sacred shrines. You're not going to find it there. All that's going on there is it's something about that place is resonating something in you that you identify as that inner peace, and you're bringing yourself to it without realizing that's the way consciousness is working. So you'll never find it out there, which basically means there's only one place to look for it. Well, that's inward. Okay, well, how and what? We already established you don't have to do anything to find it. It's just you stop doing things. So now the responsibility and the commitment to what's going on here. It seems to me like witnessing is very important. Nisargadatta said witnessing is very powerful. There's nothing passive about it. There's something about our own consciousness and witnessing world events and witnessing what's going on in our lives, and that plays a role in how all this comes together. Ram Dass said in the 1960s he would go to these peace rallies, and he said he never saw an angrier group of people screaming for peace. And now, what does that mean? It means the consciousness that we hold in ourselves has the biggest impact on what we're calling the world, the collective world, the consciousness that we each individually hold. So we have our relationship to the world is that our consciousness and the state of our consciousness matters. Yes, we get input from the world too, and there's a circle of there, but the causal chain is the inside world is far more causal than the outside world. But if you let the outside world dictate to you how you're supposed to feel, then what's going on is you are actually taking fear from the outside world, putting it back into your consciousness, and then that's what's getting held as your contribution to the world. So what does this mean in practical terms? In 2016, after the first election, my entire strategy when I would watch the news changed. Anytime I saw Agent Orange, that's my name for him, but let me see if I can find a faster way to call him. Anytime I saw him, I would go into myself to the place where I'm whole and peaceful. And I would have a mantra attached to that, whatever one, simple. And I would be beaming it at him while I'm seeing him on TV. Because if I didn't, I would gradually find anger and fear rising in me in different ways. And I know too much about the impact our consciousness has and what I'm here for right now, which I believe we all are right now at this exact moment in time, to witness, to act as a transducer for the energy. A transducer is an electronic device that converts energy from one form to another. So a microphone is a transducer that takes air and turns it back into electrical signals. A speaker is the reverse. It's a transducer that takes electrical signals and moves the speaker and puts waves into the air that our ears can hear. So we are like that at an energetic level, where our nervous system, depending on how healthy and how clear of trauma our nervous system is, acts as a resonant device, so that as we're witnessing things going on in the world and we're attuned to not just seeing, letting the senses work into the world, but focused on the inner plane and the sense and the truth and the center of what it is we are. In other words, being in awareness, the Buddhists say awareness is corrective. So when we're able to stand at that nexus between looking at the three-dimensional world and witnessing from a place of inner awareness, we are at the exact intersection, the nexus point, where we are optimized to be used by the creation to hold and bring resonance into what's going on right now, into the world, that helps the world go through the birthing, the death and birthing process that it's in right now. We have that responsibility, which is not a should. It's not like you should do this because you have this responsibility. No, it's like we have the ability to do this. So I would notice very carefully my inner world, and when it was starting to get out of whack, I would just cut off the news because I could see what it's doing to my energy field. I'm being very conscious about where my energy is and in myself, and I'd go do my inner work. And we got through all that, and then last year I wrote an article called this. What do I call it? This is not a drill.
All right.
That's what it is. And it was this idea that somehow I felt when I just described in 2016 that I was somehow had been practicing my entire life to have the strength of being and nervous system to be here now. And then 2022 happened where a month after I left the tech world, I was on a high, and I talk about this in that article. I was at a high altitude trek in the Andes. I was in Ecuador and Peru. We were at like 10, 12, 14,000 feet. And I was with 7 other men, and lots of weird shit was going down. A lot of weird stuff was going wrong all over the trip. People are falling and breaking a wrist. Somebody's getting a concussion. Somebody's getting COVID. They're getting dysentery. And in the end, we end up having to get helicoptered out because we were stuck 90 miles behind the lines in Ecuador because of a general strike. I mean, it was that kind of a trip. It was really an adventure. And they say the difference between an adventure and a vacation is on an adventure, at least once you say, why the hell did I do this trip? And so this was an adventure. Well, every time something was going wrong, everybody else was, dealing with the logistics of all and what we ever had to do, but they were fairly outward focused, and I was inwardly. Every time something went wrong, it's had this effect of driving me first and foremost in myself to that place of center, that place of inner peace where I could anchor in so I could broadcast that energy out into this field of our trip. And things always work themselves out. And I recognized after that trip, I've been in training. I'm being trained on how to use my consciousness and how to respond to outer circumstances. And then 2024 came along, and 25, and here we are, where it's like, it's even more essential now. It's actually, frankly, to tell you the truth, it feels to be getting a little bit more difficult lately for me, And of course, when I announce I'm doing a satsang like this, the universe throws at me my learning curve. It says, okay, try this on and this on and this on. You want to talk about it? Let's see how you do with this. And so I've been feel like I've been steeped more in the weight of the energy of the world. And part of it is also to just get a real clear idea of how most people are experiencing this. Because if you take the outer world to be the ultimate reality, you're getting more confused and scared every moment of every day right now.
Yeah.
And this, this raises some really deep inner questions that I don't know. We're not going to dive into it for the sake of discussion tonight. But are you the body? Is it safe to die? These are very powerful questions. Because if you are the body, or you think you are the body, and it's not safe to die, you're going to be terrified right now. And these are the times that cause questions like this to rise for all of us. To catalyze us to come more in touch with the truth of what we are and what the truth of reality is. The events are happening as they're happening because they're supposed to be happening, and we can go into all sorts of reasons why they're happening on a metaphysical level or whatever. which may or may not be helpful. Frankly, I think sometimes when I've talked that through with a lot of people, they said, well, that's really optimistic, and I'm really happy to hear that, and it makes me feel better. So there's value in going down that road. But the most important question now is, what do you do to manage your energy? How do you manage it in relationship to the world? The good news is if you realize, well, you know what? First and foremost, I'm creating the world. I'm creating my world. Good. Now I have a lot of agency as what to do about that. Thoughts? Complaints? How do you be peaceful in an insane world?
Mhm.
Here's how you do it. My state of mind has nothing to do with the outer world. It does to a lot of people, and I bet it does to us to the degree that we still think that we have to be plugged in at that level. It's not necessary to be as plugged in. Here's how the ego works. Here's how fear works. It has no power unto itself. It doesn't have power, it doesn't have the capacity to take your power from you. So what it does instead is it makes up a story to convince you to give your attention and power to it. Let me say this again. Fear is a paper tiger. It has no power unto itself. It has tricks. It has ways of hiding itself, masking itself, disguising itself as something safe. It has no power unto itself. So it must hijack your consciousness to get the power. But it can't take it. So how does it do it? It creates a story that says, let me keep you safe. I will find the threats. I will mitigate the threats. I will keep you safe.
Mm.
That's how it does it.
Mm.
And then you pay attention to it a lot. So fear says, let me keep you safe. Love says, you are safe. Now that comes into the agency, right? Every moment there's input coming to you from the outside world, and there are things rising in your experience. The agency is what you choose to meet it with. One leads to peace, the other one leads to disturbance. It's not more complicated than that. And when you disconnect enough from the world in that sense, then you are, the way I guess Jesus is the one who said it, be in the world but not of it. You're in the world, operate, function of the world, just don't value it. Don't value its stories. Don't value its values. It's an inside game. It's totally an inside game. Now, we don't go off to a cave somewhere and stick our head in the sand and say, well, screw the world, let it blow itself up. You got to be in the world, right? So, you're very powerful. Anchor in, come from that place of coherence in yourself, and then as you're every moment 24/7 you're radiating into the field this, and we lose it. There are times I go off the deep end about something I just heard that happened with ice or this or that, but I recover because I know where I know where I need to come back to. Otherwise you get lost in the outrage, you get lost in the fear. Outrage is understandable. But coming from anger and fear will never produce the results that we want.
Mm.
It just won't. It's impossible. The world is crazy. It really is insane. There's no denial, and there's no need to fix it. That's the other thing. If I feel like I have to fix the world, then I'm hooked into it in a way that, no. Keep myself in an inner balanced, peaceful space. I watch what I'm taking in. I'm watching the energy I'm working with because I understand that every moment, what it is I'm contributing to the world is what I'm radiating into it now. So take a look at your own experience and see where you notice, where you lose your inner peace. And notice what you notice about it. And notice where you can insert agency into the process. What do you notice?
No, we got okay from the beginning, from the top.
The people pleasing thing,
Yeah,
and go ahead.
yeah, and
Noticing that it's my fault, obviously, that somebody doesn't
r
like me.
right, and not. I mean, I guess what I've learned a lot, and from Satsang, working with you, and my own meditation, is just to not believe everything I think,
Ah, that's good.
and when I'm believing that whatever the first thought or belief that creates a disturbance for me is, just to even practice and not believing that and noticing what shifts for me.
Mm.
And even just that alone is such a powerful game changer.
Simply to don't believe everything you think, especially the first thing that comes up.
Especially.
Especially. Yeah. Um, don't believe everything you think, or don't believe everything I think. There's an immediate useful shift to that statement that can change the relationship a lot. And that is, don't believe everything the mind thinks. Because right away that disconnects a particular identification with the mind that is working against us. So now it's just this autonomous thing called the mind. Look, there comes that thought. Wow, look at that. There comes that thought. It's not me. It's in the field. I'm experiencing it. It's kind of noisy. I wish you would shut the hell up, but it's not me at least.
Mm-hmm.
And that speaks exactly to this inner peace. Because that's one of the things that disturbs the inner peace. I think I'm that. And it came up with this I'm bad, whatever it is, which generates feelings of guilt or unworthiness or shame or what. And now that's just like through all this noise over that place in you that otherwise is just radiating this peace. And so what happens when you see it that is not you anymore?
Well, it frees up my state to be that which I am, which is available to a lot more.
Yeah. So now I'm no longer the thought, I'm no longer the thinker, I'm no longer the thoughts, I'm the space in which the thoughts arise.
Hmm.
And how big is that space?
It's infinite.
There you go. Right. And it's really not that complicated. What we just did, you just did a shift of perception, which the Course in Miracles defines as a miracle. Shift in perception. So if I'm not the thoughts, and I'm not even the thinker, then when thoughts and things come up about the nature of the world, it's not me. It's in my experience. Don't go pathological here. It is in my experience. But there's that, and this is me. If I get all these feelings, intense, let's look at the one that's more difficult. Intense emotions, of which there's an enormous surplus of right now. But it's not that there's an entity called an emotion, and there's a lot of them, and they just happen to be running around causing havoc. The thinking mind plus mistaken identity of being the body loops together and generates fear-based emotions. So they reinforce each other. And all of it has the effect of grabbing our attention. And this I want to come back to this attention and the choice of where to place attention. Because this is the, what is it called? The kingpin? This is the thing, this is the difference that makes the difference. We have awareness, and awareness has attention. We are awareness, and awareness has attention. Where to put the focus right now. And so it's interesting that what they call in the tech world, they call it the attention economy. That social media is designed to get and capture and keep your attention. And what is it doing in that moment? Frankly, it's parasiting off of your attention to focus so they could shove ads at you so they can continue to make money. But back to the point here is there is a vying for attention. That happens at the ego level too. The tech companies do it because they need your attention in order to make money. The ego does it because it needs your attention in order to stay alive. Because it has no energy unto itself. There's a certain amount of biological energy, and there's a certain amount of, and there's life force coming through. That's the pranic body. But none of that requires an ego to be in charge of anything. In fact, it gets in the way. So the ego likes to inflate itself because it thinks that it exists, because it makes it feel like it actually exists more. I mean, it sounds like this weird entity, and frankly, it is. So it plays all sorts of games to try to puff itself up. And what we see is the most pathological example of that right now is living in the White House. But make no mistake, your ego's doing that too. So is mine. It's just not as pathological. So where does it get the energy for that? It hijacks your attention. Your attention is the source of the energy. And energy flows where attention goes. So if we focus on the story of the ego and the outrage that it creates and the fear that it creates, we're feeding it. But the moment you start to recognize your level of agency here and you flip it away, you just say, you know what, oops, I got caught down the rabbit hole. There it is. I could feel that emotion in me.
Yeah.
Breathe, let it go. I'm done with that. I'm back to choosing love. Because what comes through the channel of love? My source of safetiness.
Mm-hmm.
It will never come from anything outside of yourself. But the ego says, pay attention. I will keep you safe. I will find what we need to do to be okay. And all it does is it parasites off your attention. So once you realize this and recognize it, notice the signal when your attention has been too much in this outward direction, paying too much attention to the media. Notice the signal. Anybody notice that signal? How do you know when you're paying too much attention to these things?
The feeling you get inside.
Yeah. It's
And
very
I saw,
clear.
but I was used to watch world news all the time, and all I see now is climate change and all that, and it just doesn't feel good. So I have someone tell me if anything important's going on, let me know because I'm not watching that anymore.
Well,
You
then
know?
it's totally fine.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, you don't stick your head in the sand. You know there's stuff going on. You know what's going
right,
on,
right.
but you don't have to be consumed by it because to
Not
be,
daily, every on the hour.
well, my dad used to listen to nothing but the news in the car, and I asked him, "Why do you do that?" And he says, "Because you always have to know what's going on." And being a
Yeah.
Holocaust survivor, he always had to know what was going on. So he was listening to the news out of trauma.
Mhm.
Here's the deeper truth. The source that we are, that is the knowledge of the totality of all there is, that knows the truth of what we are, that we are not the body, that has access to the totality of the information of the entirety of all of creation, is us. And when we are connected to that, which we always are, but when we recognize and nurture the connection and reject anything that tries to get in the way of that connection, then we are always being moved into the right place at the right time for its purposes, and it's always good. When we get into trouble, it's because we've disconnected from that signal. Take a good look over your life, and you'll know that's true.
Mhm.
So, the name of the game is to stay in awareness with the self in connection and notice anything. Notice the signal, which you just mentioned, Kim. It simply doesn't feel good. And that's it. Pull the plug. And you do your meditative practices and you be in the woods and you have a stack of mantras ready to go as little pacifiers to throw at the mind when it gets cranky. And, it's set up your inner world the way you want it to be. Because it has nothing to do with the outer world. That's the other pin you have to pull the plug on, right? That belief that my inner state is dependent on something outside of me. That belief is where you give agency away.
Have you heard the it's like go state script strategy?
Can you state it?
This the script depends on our state, so how I see things,
Uh-huh.
my narrative of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
my world, the world, and then my strategy comes from my script. So whatever, however I'm seeing things, then I have a strategy for that.
Mm-hmm.
And if my state is that of fear, then my script is going to be that of fear, and my
Mm-hmm.
strategy is going to be that of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know along any of those lines, if this is if there's like a fearful energy to it, then I know where to go to the root of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty clear. Hmm.
It brings me
Anybody?
to it
Go ahead.
brings me to subscribing to an elevated emotion in a daily practice of doing such a thing.
Mm.
And I don't know, it was just something that I think I've heard many other people practitioners talk about how, the state of our well-being is the state of our the narrative that we tell ourselves, similar to what you just mentioned, the
Mm.
state script and state story script or script strategy, sorry. And I think that's the thing that helps me the most long term. Like I can
Mm.
feel things in the moment and
Mm.
and my emotions can run high for a certain. circumstances. But after a while, like it clicks back to me where what emotion am I in for a longer than a day or less than or longer than a couple hours?
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of remind myself to subscribe to an elevated emotion. An elevated emotion meaning the most high is love
Yeah.
and
Well,
happiness.
there's an interesting point there. Love is not an emotion.
Okay.
Actually, we have to differentiate between the two kinds of love because unfortunately they piggyback off the same word. There's what I call Disney love. You know, infatuation, this love of the ego's form and definition of love, which is the stuff that keeps therapists in business. Because it's cycling between explosive infatuation and despair. That's all it's doing, is going back and forth. But then there's this agape love, you know, the universal love, and that is not an emotion. The first form of love is an emotion, and that's what everybody's chasing. You know, those songs about being in love with love. That's what they're talking about. I love that high. I love being insane for the first few weeks of that relationship. And it just serially does that in one form or another. That's not what we're talking about. The love that we're talking about has no opposite in truth, right? An emotion is of this world. An emotion is, and therefore it's subject to the laws of physics, which says what goes up must come down. And so if we do things to pump up our emotional energy in that way, it's always just pushing a boulder up a hill because you're going to run out of energy and it's going to come collapsing back down and you're going to get back to a different base state. What we're talking about here is independent, it's not of this world. Therefore, it's not subject to the laws of physics. And it's always accessible because it is what we are. Inner peace, that place that we were playing and tapping into, is the same place that love is. It's, you know, you could say that that level of love is just another synonym for inner peace and vice versa. See that? So I took a picture from the yurt because we weren't going to be there today, but come back here. But I have this specifically set up on the yurt. You see the globe, and I've got 3 crystals around, and I've got that big crystal above it. And this is what I use for focusing light into world situations. So as it turns out that in 1990 or so, I was heading down to Vienna, Virginia on some business. And for whatever reason, I got this inner directive to take 3 clear quartz crystals and plant them around the outer perimeter of the White House. So I did. They'll never find them. I know exactly where they are. And then I forgot about them. And I didn't understand. I said, okay, you know, some nice, interesting new age woo-woo thing I did. And then 2016 came along. And I go, holy shit. Back then, I was already putting things in place to be able to utilize it now for this time. Well, what are crystals in this sense? Do they really mean anything? Do they really have any kind of power? Well, we're the ones who empowers what objects are. We're the ones who give the meanings to these things. And it turns out that I can take this setup and create it in my own mind, in my own energy field, to be a focal point so that every time I look at it, whenever, even if I'm not in there, there's energy being amplified and channeled through these crystals into the world situation, and it's resonating with the crystals I planted around the White House, and I'm doing what I can do from here. You can create anything like that for yourself. You can create some kind of a symbolic something. Take a stone, take a picture, think of whatever, and put it somewhere that's sacred. And anytime you look at it and you see it, you know you're running light into that situation. It's a great tool. It's quite powerful. I do this kind of work with clients and their whatever their bodies or their situations or whatever going on, and it definitely has an effect. So I just wanted to offer that.
Voodoo doll is like the opposite version of
A
that.
voodoo doll is the opposite version of that, right? That's right. So this woman is talking to her husband. He goes, let me ask you, do you ever get the feeling that somebody's putting needles into you? He goes, no. She goes, hold on. How about now? Objects are they're empty. The Buddhists say, form is empty. It's what we project into it that brings it alive. And so we have that ability to do that. Okay. Anybody have anything else they want to share about, world situation, how you're dealing with what you're dealing with? What's working, what's not working? Where do you feel like you're maybe getting pulled in too easily?
All of it's pulling me in, but I gotta practice.
So how
And
do you work with it?
I mean, I think what you just described is a great idea. How do I work with it now? I'm
Yeah.
not, so I'm not doing a good job. So I think a good practice would be just a reminder that what you just described it really rang true to me because I used to love carrying like stones with me. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know why I used to like just carry them in my pockets until I lost them and then I stopped doing it because I really cared about them. But it reminds me, and I think you just pointed it out, that we are the source.
We are the source.
We are the source.
Yes.
So it's a beautiful reminder in the midst of chaos where, okay, this can't affect me as much as I think it can, or how
Right.
much my ego is portraying it to be
Exactly.
as dangerous.
Yes. That is exactly right. And I mean, let's talk about what safety means in this day and age. Like
Yes.
how does safety operate really? Most people walk around in an unconscious state, unaware. And as such, their consciousness goes to the default state of the collective, which is fear-based operation. And so what happens is fear, when you're focused on it, because it's sucking up your energy, it diminishes the quality of your energy field. Number one, there's fear in there. And like attracts like, electromagnetics. We're talking about electromagnetics. So if somebody holds fear in their field, they're drawing reflections of that to themselves. That's the way creation works. You can't get around that. So that is the nominal case for most of humanity. And then so they're susceptible because there are all sorts of dynamics of events that are happening, and they can draw that to themselves because their energy field is susceptible to it. But the more you choose, you actively, volitionally choose love over fear. Let's back up one step. The nature of fear is it's very incoherent. It's very disorganized. It's all over the place. You do get pockets of people that collaborate together, so you have a collective fear and we see that right now going on. But even that, even if you took the totality of the fear that is not just already created and generated, but is even ever possible, all the fear there ever was, all the fear there ever could be, and you put it into one big ball, and you measure the amount of power it has, it is less than a dropper within an ocean. It has no power on it, and it's unsustainable. That's the nature of fear energy. Love, on the other hand, is coherent energy. It is a series of each one of us, when we're in that state, when we're in alignment with that, we are in relationship to the whole. We are a harmonic off the central vibratory core pattern of all there is. We're all in relationship, we're all in harmony. And that is a coherent energy where the waves are moving in the same order together. Different frequencies because we're unique in the way we are operating, if you think of us as energy patterns. But all of that, when we're in alignment with source, is infinite energy and infinite power. And when that's coming through your neurology and what that's radiating through your aura, if you will, we know, I mean, the people up at HeartMath, the research facility up here, they measure the electrical activity of the brain, and they say it gives off a field of maybe, a little bit tiny, you have to, maybe an inch or so. But the energy field of the heart is 25 feet in diameter. It's very powerful. And so when your heart, your emotional heart and your spiritual heart are in alignment, or as it comes more and more into alignment, the amount of coherent power that comes through your energy field goes big. Think of that as a positive force field that just will only attract that which is like itself, and therefore it rejects fear, stuff. That's the source of safety. I'm walking around in that bubble of, and it's not a bubble because there's no boundary. Where's the outer boundary of that? It's in the infinite. So I'm not even walking around, I'm walking around in a very powerful field. And like attracts like, and electromagnetically. And so you see that your safest place is always when you're choosing love. So everything we've been talking about tonight all maps together. Okay. Let's sit quietly for a while. Just going to mute us all. Okay. Come back to the heart. Settle in. Be willing to give up anything that is in the way of coming back into this place of yourself. Feel the light quietly radiating through yourself. From the center of the center, through the mind, the emotions, through the body, through the cells, emanating from the source of you, the center, through it all out into the world. But not just on its own, it's operating with everyone else who's tapped into this. So when Jesus was on the cross and people were stoning him and cursing him, what did he say? He said, "Forgive them, Lord, for they know not what they do." What he was talking about in that moment was forgive the ego. It's insane. It doesn't know what it's doing. And the world is a collection of egos. The world is insane. It doesn't know what it's doing. And the prescription for this in the Course in Miracles is you forgive the ego, you forgive the world. Bless you. Because it's insane and it doesn't know what it's doing. And that lets us off the hook for all sorts of things and keeps us free and clear of being plugged into that. David Hawkins says you don't kill the ego, you just love it out of existence. And every time we step into that, every time we make that choice, we are plugged into the infinite. And we're safe. And now back to as the world turns.